We started off focusing on volunteering abroad, so empowering people to do service internationally. We're in Latin America, Asia, Africa, we're about to launch in Europe, and now we're in Cuba. This was a first for us where we had no connections in Cuba. I had never been to Cuba, and the other founder of UBELONG had never been to Cuba, but we had this incredible client, the Prouty Project, who we've been working with since 2012. The Prouty Project wanted to go to Cuba, and I very clearly said, you know, guys, like we're not in Cuba, I don't know Cuba, it's an incredibly difficult place to get into. But they trusted us and said, well, you know what, we just believe in you, and we believe in UBELONG. We had great experiences before. We hired a wonderful professor from Rice University, Louis Gutberg, who is an expert on the Caribbean, on Latin America, and in Cuba in particular. So he and I went back and forth to Cuba, and we set everything up from, you know, very practical, logistical things like host families and, you know, restaurants that we would potentially go to obviously the programmatic things of where we're going to volunteer and where we're going to do service. Cuba is unlike any other country, and there's an enormous amount of complexity, and there's so many different voices, especially when you come from the United States. You know, we're kind of brought up hearing the politicians speak and hearing this very heated rhetoric, and then here you are, you just arrived, you got those voices from the United States that you remember for your whole life, and then you got these Cubans who have their own preconceptions and misconceptions about the United States and even in their own country, and it all kind of comes together. We've gone so far beyond, you know, kind of like the tourist trail. I mean, we lived with Cubans in their homes. We had meals with them. You know, we had young people from, you know, a guy who was a Taekwondo champion to people who are, you know, working as cleaning ladies talk to us. The UBELONG trips are about the service and the education and the sharing with the local population, but they're also about coming together as a team. So I think the biggest thing I've noticed is how we've come together. You know, we have people from multiple different countries, different cities in the United States, different generations, ages, and so forth. Everybody came together. The beautiful thing is that when you're living such an intense thing, you know, where every day is so packed and you're going on this emotional roller coaster, because one day you're really at the top and you're doing something that's just, but then the next day you might be learning about something that's really difficult to process, and we're kind of doing all this together. You know, I can't think of another way to come together with other people in such a short amount of time. It's extraordinary what we've done in terms of really trying to get as close as we could to the core of what Cuban society is like. But to speak of Hemingway, who loved Cuba, the whole concept of the old man and the sea. So we want to empower people and help them to help themselves and go in as eagles.